I just had such a good conversation with my dear friend, mentor of mine, board member, Chris Hanks, founder, CEO, leader of the Institute for Entrepreneurship. He's been a part of several businesses, shared a lot of information about transformation within your business, scaling your business, advice he wish he would have had starting a business, how he navigates the pull between life and work. Just so much, so many nuggets of information, so many great takeaways. I hope you enjoy it. Welcome to Market Mavericks. I'm Matthew Eford. Join me as I speak with leaders who are redefining industries in every corner of the market. From startups to established businesses, we'll uncover the strategies, challenges, and insights that drive success. Get ready to be inspired by the Mavericks who are shaping the future of business. I have my dear friend and an old professor here, Chris Hanks. I had the opportunity of having him at the University of Georgia, go Dogs, in the entrepreneurship program. And we've been connected now for a few years through the Institute of Entrepreneurship that he runs, it's a mastermind group here in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm very thankful to be a part of, as well as he's on my board of advisors. So, Chris, thanks so much for sitting down with me this morning and taking some time in your busy schedule. So really just kind of to start, kind of intro it a little bit with the Institute for Entrepreneurship, but talk to me about what your current role is, what you're doing, and give us a little bit of oversight of your business background.
So the role, as far as what I'm attempting to create now, is we're attempting to create the most transformational organization that exists in entrepreneurship. When we met at the University of Georgia, of which I was very, very proud to be a part of that institution and have very fond memories and all that. But in academia, you get famous for building places of information. And I'm at a season of life where I became disillusioned with that objective, about getting famous for your ability to produce information as opposed to getting famous for your impact, right? Like how do we build a place that's famous for its impact on others? It's famous for its love of others. And so it's a simple idea, but like, what if we got 100 of the most transformational CEOs together, of which you're a part of? We have a place for them to transform their people, the people that they hire. So let's do executive development. Let's do emerging leader development. And then let's have each, those 100 people invest in the next generation of entrepreneurs, champion them, mentor them, and our students in middle school, high school, and college age. So it's a simple idea of getting 100, and let's build the most transformational place that exists on the backs of the most transformational CEOs in our community. So that's the idea. It's a challenge in that I'm better at the information than I am the transformation, and I'm still learning, and I don't feel like I'm very good at it.
Well, I would disagree with you on that you're not very good at it. I love being in group with you. You do bring a lot of value from the information side, and I love what you and the team bring. But there's an innate ability that you have personally, just to give you some kudos, that you connect the information with application, which I always admired in your class, but also now being in group with you as well. I see that so much in you that it's not just about information for information's sake. It's about, why does this information matter? And so what's so valuable in that group is, as entrepreneurs, as we share, man, you ask some of the most pointed questions, right? To go deeper, which is honestly what we need. We don't need just a bunch of yes men around us or people just taking orders. That is a safe place to come and to share some burdens, right? As individuals, as dads, as moms, as husbands, as wives, as leaders. But it's also, we can be a little bit more transparent around, hey, not everything's just rosy all the time, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that disruptive questions can be more powerful than answers, right? We all have Google, but the disruptive question, sometimes the right question at the right time can really just offer a change, and I think it's biblical. Like, I think that, from what I know, or from what I remember, and I don't want to be misquoted on this, or maybe I'm wrong, but I think that Jesus only answered three questions directly in the New Testament.
Oh, yeah.
Over 300 times he asked a question. When he was asked a question, he had a question.
Oh,
And I think that there's a lesson there, right? Like, the questions are almost like a master key. Like, hey, what's the thing that's, what's the thing that I'm afraid of really? Or what's the most irritating thing about working with me? Would I hire myself as a CEO? Like, I don't know. We could go on and on about the questions that we can wrestle with that. I think that aggressive growth needs a compass more than a map. And then the right question is like a compass. It orients us to the right direction. I may still misstep and go the wrong way and all that stuff, but I still have that orientation, right? That true north, that if a really good question is top of mind, it'll, I think I'll get there faster.
Yeah. I love that point. For you said oftentimes in class, and you still quote it, and I quote it a lot. Peter Drucker, the bottlenecks are always at the top, right?
Yeah.
As leaders of our organization, we're the rate limiting step for growth. And so, something I've learned from you that I'm trying to take to our team is when I'm asking better questions, I'm getting more throughput through my team. That it's not just what can Matthew do for the organization, it's now what can everyone do for the organization. And I'm not the smartest person in the room. I do know a lot, but I'm certainly not the smartest. But also, as it kind of dovetailed down, it frees up more of my time. Now I'm not just the one who they have to come to with every single question. By responding as you do with good questions, it's helping my team think better. And so that way they have more of a compass. They have more, as you said, the direction to go as future questions come up, instead of just being, hey, we got to go to Matthew, get the answer, because he's going to micromanage us, and it's got to be his way or the highway.
Yeah, and I have a voice, right?
Yeah.
And you heard my opinion. That makes me feel valued, and people who feel more valued create more value.
Yeah.
It's going to drive up my engagement. It's not like, I'm working for Matthew's organization. It moves us more towards a we. We are part of something. I have a voice. I have an opinion. I have. I'm vested in the problem now, or in our mission. So
I love that.
That creates I think that it creates a lot of dignity too. Because now I feel a little bit more significant about what I do. I'm not just a receptionist. I'm not just a customer service rep. There's no you are a valued part of the team. You all play a different role, and we have, here's our mission, and here's your role in the mission, and here's why it matters.
I love that so much. So talk to me about early business life. So you come out of school. What's kind of your entry into business life? I know that you're at the institute now that you've started, and I know that's been kind of a long journey. There's been different iterations of that we can get into in just a second, but talk to me back early before the institute. What were you doing?
So early on, I was a risk management major at the University of Georgia. So I
Go
had a
Dogs.
corporate career in risk management. So did that. My last corporate risk management gig was with Coca-Cola here. That's how I got back to Atlanta.
Okay.
Out in the Bay Area, doing that kind of work, and then Texas, and then got to Georgia, or back to Georgia via Coca-Cola. And for me, the best part of working for Coca-Cola was telling others I worked for Coca-Cola. Like, I didn't really enjoy it. And I thought, is this the next 60 years, or whatever? I was like, is this the 40 years? I don't. And this is way back when, in the 90s, when they had bookstores in the mall. And I remember walking in a bookstore during lunch break, and I grabbed an Entrepreneur magazine and saw an advertisement for a franchise. And I thought, hey, it's just something about it just grabbed me. I was like, I didn't consider myself an entrepreneur. I just thought that I wasn't really fulfilled with what I'm doing. And I have always had good jobs. I work for Coca. If you would have told me as a student, at University of Georgia, hey, one day you're going to graduate and work for Coca-Cola, I would have thought, well, done.
Made it.
I did make it.
Yeah.
and I wasn't fulfilled. I wasn't happy. I became grumpy on about Saturday at 3 because the next day was Sunday, which meant the next day was Monday.
Yeah.
So from Friday to 5 to Saturday at 3, I was like, yeah, all right. So
Yeah,
yeah.
and that's such a good indication of, kind of what the Lord's doing, or just what you're feeling called to into that kind of leap into business ownership. So talk us through any business that you've been a part of, kind of the good, the bad, the ugly. What have you learned in that kind of startup phase, that first 12 to 24 months? What kind of advice would you have around that space?
Ooh, that's a hard one for brevity, because there's so much that I've learned and there's so much advice at that stage, because it's the hardest job that exists in business.
Yeah.
There's no harder job than going from nothing to something, and then going from that something to something great,
Yeah.
right? Building a great business is seriously overwhelming, and it is incredibly isolating, and so it's very challenging. And so I didn't know that going in. I didn't know that, hey, this is going to be hard. I just thought it'd be fun. The first thing was a music store franchise. It's like, hey, music, I always like music. Hey, I'm going to do that. It's going to be fun. Wow, that was such a naive point of view. And understanding the complexity of just running a business,
Yeah.
meeting payroll every 2 weeks, just that the burden that you can never ever shirk, right? There's a weight to owning a business that I didn't understand. Um, and that was just a smaller thing. I didn't get really sophisticated until the dot-com boom, where we started raising capital and getting a little bit larger and expanding my vision of what entrepreneurship could be and what is
Okay.
how to scale businesses and that kind of thing. So I didn't understand the weight. And I would, I guess if I had to land on one thing instead of rambling with several thoughts and advice, is I think to grow a business, you need to borrow as many brains as possible.
Okay.
I didn't do that.
Yeah.
I took pride in going it alone, that rugged individualism. I can figure it out. And uh, I didn't realize how much I need others if I'm going to do something special, right? Um, I need to solicit advice, get feedback, be in community with people who are doing what I'm attempting to do or have led to where I'm trying to lead. I think that that's a powerful thing that I really missed out on, and I didn't realize the power of that until much later.
I love that. Yeah, and we've said on here a lot. He who walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools suffers harm. Proverbs 13:20. And it's something, if you're a person of faith or not, the application stays true, right? You show me the people you hang around, and I'll show you the direction you're going. And that's such a key piece, because I know for when we started our Mosquito Joe franchise, and then we started our Christmas lights business, Lighting Pros, and then now that we started Lighting Pros franchise, each step of that, there have been people I've surrounded myself with that I'm asking them questions like, "Hey, what would you wish you would have known when you started?" Right? Give me more of your playbook. Some of the lessons we're just going to have to learn, right? I remember you teaching about the corridor effect, that you walk down this hall, and some of the lanes off of the hall you don't see until you start walking in one direction. So sometimes there are nuggets, there are lessons that we learn just along the way. But overall, the idea of let me learn from your mistakes, that's super valuable. So kind of in line with that, that's something we love to ask around here. What's a mistake that you've made in your business career? I know there's many in mine, but what's one that you kind of say this was a big learning moment for me, and what's a takeaway or a couple of takeaways that you came from it?
Gosh, again, such an overload, because I continually make them. You would think that with age and more experience, you would be better, but um, you know, uh, just because I've been doing it longer is not a proxy that I'm doing it better, right?
Yeah.
It's reflection that turns experience into insight, and so I keep making mistakes, um, and that's a real challenge. I have made so many. One of them is well, maybe I'll try to simplify because I'm trying to simplify it into actionable things versus me just telling war stories, which I'm prone to do. All people, if you own several businesses, you want to tell the stories,
Yeah.
right?
Oh yeah.
Back then we made this mistake, but there was no internet. So here's what we did. Well, that's not applicable to anybody. But I didn't really understand the blocking and the tackling wins football games.
Okay.
Right? Like I was trying to draw fancy plays. I didn't really think about the execution of the blocking and tackling. Like, look, if I'm going to scale, I need a foundation. What's my foundation? I need a business model that scales because what I may be doing right now, maybe that business model is not scalable. And so let me look into that. And if I have those two, if I have a foundation and if I have a business model that scales, and usually there's only two other things that are keeping me from where I want to be. It's my lack of systems and my lack of people.
Okay.
And so I didn't know that. I didn't know that systems can make a really bad leader look good. But the lack of systems can make a good leader look bad. Like, what's our system? What's our process? And for entrepreneurial people who hate bureaucracy and I hate policy, I was like, no, I don't want a system that confines me. It's like, no, that's powerful. I didn't know that. Systems are a good thing. And people. How do you develop a people? Because I think one of the biggest threats to growth is underdeveloped people. And a business doesn't become the plans that it makes. It becomes the people it hires. And so how do I really bet on the right people and untap that potential and all that stuff? That's something I didn't understand. I just thought, hire so-and-so for the slot.
Yeah.
Just go grab person, put them on the slot. No, not at all. If I'm going to have a championship team, I need to go find those franchise players who can take us to the Super Bowl. And so who are those people? And if they're not there yet, what's my consistent process for developing them?
Oh, I love that so much. So you brought up two great points. You brought up the systems and the people. So let's take the systems first, and we'll come back to the people. When you go in and consult with a business, when you meet with somebody from the institute that you're helping mentor, that's asking for advice, what are the common systems that you're looking for? Do you kind of have a list that you go through?
Yeah, pretty much. And I think they're pretty consistent. Like if you look at any system for scale, and there's several that are actually out there, meaning like EOS, Entrepreneur
Yeah.
Operating System, there's scale ups, there's the generative organization. There's a few out there. They tend to have the same basics, meaning like, okay, what's our system for marketing, right? Marketing is not I make the sales. Marketing is not I rely on word of mouth. I need a system and a process for generating a marketing system that generates a consistency of revenue. I have to have that consistency. I have to have that process. What is it? Now I have to have a process for execution. Like, what are the 4 things that we do consistently that is going to drive the customer experience? Or is it 6 things? It's just, whatever, I want to list as long as necessary, but as short as possible about the things that matter most. Not all things, because I don't have time for all things. But what are the few things that have the biggest impact, and how do we consistently deliver that? We have to have a system for that. We have to have a scorecard for that. When we keep score, performance tends to go up. When we keep score, intensity tends to go up. You and I can tell if we were looking outside of a window and not hearing anything, but we saw 2 people playing basketball in the distance, we could tell whether or not they're keeping score or not, just because of the intensity of play. As soon as somebody says, all right, that's 2, intensity goes up.
Yeah.
So that's part of the system. That's what I look at. It's like, how do we keep score? What does success look like? We can't defeat an enemy that we can't define. So what I want to have a clear definition of what success looks like. I want to have a clear definition of what failure looks like. And let's have clarity in that, because I am often surprised when I talk to business owners and their executive teams, and everybody will have a different definition of what winning is and what success is. And I can't imagine, if we're going to compare that to sports, which I'm prone to do, and I do too much of that. But I can't imagine in a locker room at halftime, everybody knows what the most important metric is. And even the popcorn salesman knows that. Yes, there's a lot of things to measure, but we know what the most important thing is. and we know what winning means. And I think we have to offer that clarity, because all of the clutter is all of the clutter sort of really is a threat to growth. And I believe that we all have weeds that are choking our business, choking our potential. And so one of the things about the art of growth is eliminating that clutter and getting rid of those weeds.
Yeah, I love that so much. We talk a lot about keep it simple, the keep it simple, silly or stupid, whatever you want to say, the KISS principle, and it's more in line with the most important thing. If I hit one thing, that's one of the things we love about EOS, the rocks. So this quarter, what is the most important thing for me as an individual to get accomplished this month? And I love the 90-day window. That's just EOS. That's what we've implemented and enjoy as a team to be able to look at how am I moving closer to that goal and keeping score, and it gives you the right personality. So let's take it into the team approach, take it into the people. When you go in and you work with several of the folks within our institute as well as outside of our institute, what are you looking to establish when you're looking to develop people? What kind of process? Is there a specific rubric that you're going through? Is it hey, anytime I come in, I always ask these three questions, or can you kind of give us some insights into that?
Well, it's incredibly challenging. I have come to believe that there's no such thing as business problems. What we usually identify as a problem is a people problem disguised as a business problem, because fundamentally business is pretty easy. Just have more revenue than expenses. Well, what's keeping me from that? It's people, because customers aren't saying yes, and customers are a person. Vendors, suppliers, investors, they're all people. So it's really, really hard to develop people. It's incredibly challenging. A few of the best practices that we've embraced is attempting to meet them where they are, as opposed to where we think they should be.
Okay.
So here's where they are, then clearly identifying where do they want to be. Not because, hey, here's our mission as a company and you should be as excited as I am, because they're not.
Sure.
They want to create their story, not necessarily yours. So where do they want to be? And then what's next? And then it's consistency and accountability on the what's next, right? We know where we are. We know where we want to be. Okay, so what's the next step? What do we think will be the best step we could take?
So how does a business owner or business leader, how do they find out where their people are? Well, what's kind of that process? What would you recommend in that?
I would recommend having space for those conversations to occur.
Okay.
Most of the time we're so busy that we let our busyness impact our ability to build a business, because these are the fundamentals that build a business. So having a space where it says, hey, what's most important to you? What excited you most about last week? So if we get together, like, for example, we like with our organization, our staff, we spend an hour together every week, and it's just purely connection.
Nice.
It's not going over rocks. There's a time for that, scorecards and all that. It's just purely connection to talk about things that we believe matter. And if we create the space for growth, sometimes we have to create the conditions for growth. Like, I can put an oak tree in a potted plant and it's only going to grow so big, right? It's going to stunt the growth because there's no room for it to grow. I think we have to create that room to grow, and that expectation to grow. Like, most organizations, I don't think have a strong culture of personal and professional development. It's not part of their DNA. And I think just creating that culture as well, because then it becomes contagious. Then it becomes something that I'm expected to do. I'm not expected to stay where I am. I'm not expected to not grow for the next 5 years.
Sure.
They expect me to grow because they care about me. It's like, wow, if I really set up a culture where I take care of the people who are taking care of the company, I can see some really, really neat things. So meeting them where they are is certainly a key element of if I want to develop people, I think I have to be a good student of those people.
Cool.
They have to know what's important to them, what the thing they're most proud of, the thing they're most excited about. And another thing, which is a huge topic, so I'll try to be brief on this, but I think that another part of those fundamentals is knowing their story and then reframing that story. Because we have a story in our heads that are limiting our success, or we have a story that has helped us get to where we are. But a lot of times that's, a story plus story plus repetition becomes a belief.
Okay.
And so we have limiting beliefs. It's like, look, I want to know the story of you. And what's the story of where you want to be? And then like really understanding that story and seeing if it's the real story as opposed to the one they felt safe to say, and then attempting to help them write a new story.
I love
Because
that.
some people literally can't see themselves as a leader of a $20 million organization.
Yeah.
Or, hey, people like me, I don't come from success. People like me, I don't get promotions. People like me, I don't this. Giving people a new story, I think, can really help them have just a very different future. And I think that's beautiful.
Yeah, I love that so much. I got exposed to some of the ideas around our subconscious decisions during the day, right? That there's 90+% of our decisions, some people say 95% of our decisions during the day are subconscious, that we're not actively thinking about them.
Yeah.
And so that's so important, as you're saying, the story that we're telling ourselves, the word that we're speaking over ourselves, or we're speaking over our staff, but that dialogue, that monologue within our head, the truths that we believe about ourselves, helping redefine that is so important, because
really
what I like to say is focus dictates direction. So what we're focused on is going to determine the direction that we're going. And I love that perspective.
Yeah. And you mentioned focus. I don't think that, and this is an opinion, I don't know if I'm right, but I don't think that leadership can be manufactured. I think it has to be nurtured. And it's an invitation. Like, I'm not going to force you to do it, but I'm here if you want it.
Cool.
Like, I'm not going to force it on you. So I want to focus my efforts. I think that's a good word when it comes to developing people. I think our focus should intensify with those who bear the maximum responsibility. And I think that's another biblical example, because Jesus preached and fed thousands, right? He trained 70, he discipled 12, but he mentored 3, right? And those 3, why those 3? Because at least by tradition, they bore more of the responsibility. And so our focus should magnify and should I can't spend equal amounts of time with all people. I've seen leaders make that mistake. Like, okay, well, I have 20 people in my organization, so I'm going to do one-to-ones with all 20. Well, I don't know if that's realistic. Somebody else can maybe do those one-to-ones, but who are you going to really spend your focus time with? Should it be, I would argue, it's got to be with the people who bear the maximum responsibility and the people who want it. Some people don't want growth, and maybe that's okay. This is okay. Well, that's going to maybe limit your upward potential, and you still do a good job in this role, and that's fine. But that's not the person that I can build a growing organization around.
So let's take a little bit of a pivot in that. You've been a part of organizations for a long time, high growth organizations a lot of times, and there is a pull between, as a husband, as a dad, as a son, as a friend. How did you navigate that pull? I think balance is a myth. I don't think there's a way to balance that, but I do think there's a way to navigate the pull and to be intentional around how we're scheduling. So how have you found success in navigating that kind of pull between what people would call work-life balance?
I don't think I've done it as well as I would have liked. If I would have gone back and do over, there's a lot of do-overs I would do, because now I have adult children, and I think that my generation, or the way I was raised, you almost took pride in your ability to, there was pride in working 16-hour days, right? Like that was what a man is supposed to do, a provider does. So I agree with you about work-life balance. I don't believe in that personally. I believe in work-life presence, and I wish I was better at that. If I only have 10 minutes with my daughter at night, I feel like there's a season for that. And maybe that's okay. As long as those 10 minutes are fully focused. Like it's going to be the most fun 10 minutes, the silliest 10 minutes, the most memorable 10 minutes. No child will remember this is the exact amount of time my father spent with me or my mother spent with me. What they will remember is moments. We remember moments, not durations of time. And my job is to create those moments that matter, create those experiences that we're going to talk about. And that's powerful. So I got to be fully present to do that. So I don't want to apologize for my lack of time. And same with the workplace. Like, hey, if I right now there's a season where if there's a season where I have to really pour into my family and I'm not as plugged into my business as I'd like to be, I'm going to give myself grace for that. But when I'm there, I have to want to be fully present and fully there. You know, I think that presence, um, presence and focus are powerful. I never have enough time so I can maximize and buy myself more time by being fully present in the moment and focused on the moment. So I'm not apologetic, and I know, Matthew, you know this about me. I'm not the most responsive guy, and I wish I was, but I'm just not. I'm not the most responsive guy on text, emails, phone calls, that kind of thing. But that's something I've accepted. And I'm okay with that. What I'm not okay with about is if you and I went out to lunch and you felt like I was somewhere else. Like that to me is inexcusable. Like I'm not as responsible because hey, we're really, really busy with our lives. Everybody is. But making people feel like they're not important when we're with them. Like if I made my family feel like they're secondary because when I get home, I'm still on my computer and I'm still checking messages. I'm constantly distracted because I'm checking my messages every a few minutes while I'm playing with my kids. I think that's a problem because when I'm with my kids, I want to be with my kids.
Yeah.
And if I'm not with my kids, I'm not going to be with my kids.
Yeah. Yeah, I found one of the best things for us that we've done since the boys have been born. So Walker's going on 7. He's just over 6.5 now. And we have found, and there's been different seasons in our business that I've done this better than others. But typically, I asked Hannah, what's the most important time for me to be home? When's most stressful for you? She has made the sacrifice to stay home with our boys, which is a huge investment of her and her time. And in that, she said, the afternoons, like the kind of quote unquote 5 o'clock to bedtime is so hard and it's so challenging timing wise, managing the chaos of the boys and the end of day energy and the zoomies as we've called them and getting dinner ready and all that. And it's so, okay, you know what? I'm going to schedule my time. I'm just going to be unavailable as best I can be. Do I do it perfect? Of course not. But I'm going to do everything I can to be present during that time. And what I found for me, I have to put my phone away. I can't even have it with me. I am so addicted to being connected to the business and what's happening and the growth and the podcast and all the things. I love to do things. But as you said, and I love that you pointed that out, I'm showing my boys that they're not most important in this moment. It may not be I don't get all day with them, but I've got a couple hours with them that I can heavily invest and I can be present. That my presence is what's so important for my home life, but also for my business. That when I'm engaged in working in my schedule, I need to be fully engaged because then I'm most productive.
Absolutely. And that's such a powerful thing. And I wish the younger me would have applied that lesson. I think that I'm reminded, I should watch my word count and not be worried about this, but I'm reminded of a book that I read that really impacted me. It's called Chasing Daylight, written by the CEO of KPMG when he was given 3 months to live. And it starts off with, I am blessed. I was given 3 months to live. And part of the theme of the book is that gave him more time than if he'd have lived 2 extra decades, because it would have been like on the planes and, doing things that CEOs of major organizations do, versus those 3 months were the most focused, the most intense. And he lived so fully that he actually had more time by being given 3 months. And it was a powerful concept. And I'm probably not translating that concept very well, but I just will reiterate, I do believe that we buy ourselves way more time when we are fully present.
I love that.
And 10 minutes, an hour with your kids when you wish it was 8 hours, uh, as long as it's a good 10 minutes or an hour,
Yeah.
that's not what shapes our experiences, shapes our growth. It's not what we remember.
Yeah.
I didn't look at the clock. I just remembered, hey, remember when you said that funny thing or we did this silly stuff? That's what we remember.
Yeah, we certainly do. So talk to me about, you mentioned a book there. I'll definitely put that in the show notes. I'll look forward to picking that one up myself. You're an avid reader like myself, and you've read many, many more books than I have. So give us, if you had to pick, which I know is hard, right? And you get asked this question, but if you had to pick a book, I'll give you two. If you had to pick for a book or a couple of books for a business owner that you said, hey, I wish if I could just get this in your hand, you could read this. Because in college, it was Michael Gerber's E-Myth Revisited.
Yeah.
And I reference that book so much. I give that book out. I encourage our franchisees to get that book. Across the board, I reference that book a lot. I've got some of my own, but what's a book, maybe you've just read it in the last year, that has really stood out to you that you feel like, hey, I wish every business owner would have access to this?
Wow, that is such a challenging question, and it shouldn't be. I mean, I should be a lot more on point with answers like this because I'm always looking for that good book, and I'm always there's books that I could read any book and draw something from it, and maybe reject something like, oh well, I think that's overblown or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm struggling a little bit with a really really good answer. Um, I guess I'll just lean towards what most people would say. I didn't love EOS, or I'm sorry, Traction by Gino Wickman. I didn't, which is EOS is based upon the book Traction by Gino Wickman. I didn't love it as far as content wise, but I do think having a process for scale is important. So whether or not you agree with that process or not, or you have certain issues with parts of the process, at least it's a process for scale. And I think that's powerful. So I would go Gino Wickman, Traction. I would go Vern Harnish, Scale Ups for the same reason. Like those are two basics in class, almost like the Michael Gerber thing.
Yeah.
Were they the best and the one that I couldn't put down? No, not at all. There was others that I just couldn't put down. Like I liked Unreasonable Hospitality. Just
me too.
By that concept, right? Like, hey, what could we do that's unreasonable? What could we do that's irresistible, right? But as far as for business owners who are looking to grow, I mean, having the fundamentals of a system for growth, I think, are important.
I love that. Yeah, I love in the Unreasonable Hospitality when he goes out and gets a hot dog and cuts it up for the cup. I mean, it's just that it goes back to your earlier point, right? To empower your team to be able to do that is you will create the term raving fans. You will create a culture. You will create a following within your organization that is unmatched. Competition is just not really there. But obviously that's going to be really hard. So
yeah, and one of the reasons I like that book so much is it reminds me of Seth Godin's quote, which I liked a lot. He defined business as the irrational pursuit of being irresistible.
Oh yeah,
and I really like that.
Yeah.
I was like, that's fascinating to me. Like, wow, what if I defined my business with that same definition? What would change for me, or what would I do differently?
I love that. So let's wrap up. I got a couple of questions I just kind of like to ask just to get people's thought process to help maybe a young leader or somebody who's wanting to get into business. How do you, tell me about a goal that you have. You mentioned earlier we're striving for 100 of the most influential CEOs in Atlanta. So that's a goal, but tell me a goal. It could be that one. But talk to us about a goal that you have and kind of how you set it, and most specifically, what steps are you taking to reach it?
I don't like goals. I've changed my opinion on that a little bit. I don't like the word goal anymore because I think goals I can hit or not hit. I like the word commitment.
Okay.
Like if I was traveling and and I said to my wife, like, look, hey, I'm going to be gone for 3 days and I have a goal of being faithful. That's I don't think she's going to be comforted by that, right?
Yeah.
But commitment is different.
Sure.
So what am I committed to? is I think is a more powerful question than a goal. I'd rather have your commitments. So that's just a little thing.
Cool.
So
I
what am
like
I
that a lot.
committed to? I am committed to transformation. I am committed to building a place famous for love.
Cool.
And I stink at that. So I got to keep restating that because I need that commitment to be front and center. And that's the thing that I want to orient us and drive us, you know, when we do our retreats, when we do our growth summits, when we gather in circles. Like, I want that commitment to not, again, not informing, which I'm prone to do. And I love to lecture, versus no loving. And you've taught me some things on that. Like, you gave me that book, which I really enjoyed, about just being fully present and being sitting with somebody. Because sometimes saying nothing is the most powerful thing you can do. I don't have that ability to discern this person's going through a hard time. They don't need a lecture. They don't need advice right now. They just need me to be there, or just to check in with them via text. I don't know how to love well. And I just think that people grow where they're cared for and loved, not where they're informed.
Yeah.
And I got that formula for so many years, the reverse.
Yeah.
You grow by me informing. Let's have content.
Yeah, I love that. And it is contagious, right? It is something that, as the culture changes within the organization, then you start attracting that more. You start encouraging that more. What's celebrated gets repeated, and then what happens is then the culture of the community continues to do that well, so that way it grows beyond yourself. Obviously, it starts with you as the leader, but then that culture trickles down, and then it gets out into the marketplace, which is what you're doing and what you're wanting to do. So, last piece of advice: if you would look back over your career, I know you shared a couple of things which have been great, and I'm sure this will be a podcast that people go back and listen to. I hope they will. But what would you kind of summarize as somebody who's looking to get into business? Maybe they're in the corporate world and they're a corporate refugee and they're looking to start their business, or they're just fresh out of school, or they just graduated high school, they're not going to college, they're wanting to start their own gig. What kind of advice would you give to them that you wish you would have had? Is there anything else beyond what you've already shared?
I would be careful and thoughtful about my reasons why.
Okay.
I assumed it was going to be easier, right? I assumed that, well, if other, like, hey, it can't be, if you go into a small retail shop, you say, well, what, there's not a whole lot to that. I think I could do that. And you can, but it's going to test different parts of your character. It's going to test parts of your abilities in ways that you can't see yet. And so I've got to have a strong why to withstand that. When things get tough, is this something that's super important to me? Is this something that I'm going to not try? When people say, hey, I'll try this, and if it doesn't work, I can just go get another job. Well, then save yourself the time, because you've already given yourself permission to fail. Because if you're going to try it, you're probably going to fail at it, versus I'm going to do it because this is just who I feel like I'm being called to it. I feel like this is important. I feel like I can make a difference. I feel like I'll be more fulfilled. Those are more powerful reasons. I think, because if we identify the why, then the how will show up. Because the good news is, there's so much information about how to grow and run a business that there are answers, and there's people who've been there, done that. But I have to realize that it's going to be a tough road, and I've got to count the cost, so to speak, and say, look, am I willing to sacrifice and go through discomfort right now for something later on, right? Am I willing to, and what do I need to say no to and let go of for me to embrace this new life and this new identity and this new version of myself?
Yeah, I love that so much. It's so much easier to have an out. It just is. It's so much easier to have an out, and to be able to have kind of that back door, but to be fully committed in the season that you're in, I think is super, super important. I love that. So that's excellent advice. Well, Chris, I appreciate your time very much. Thank you for the impact that you've made in myself, in my organization, in my family, and to all of us here at Market Mavericks. Thank you for joining us, Everyone, we will see you soon. Thanks and God bless.
Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Market Mavericks. We hope you're walking away inspired and ready to take your own adventure to the next level. Don't forget to follow the show to keep up with our latest episodes. And if you enjoyed today's conversation, make sure to subscribe, share it with others who could benefit. And hey, if you know a market maverick who has a story that needs to be heard, please drop their name in the comments. We would love to bring their insights to the show. Until next time, keep pushing boundaries and leading with purpose.